Welcome to Epic World History. Journey with us through the rise and fall of empires, from the mighty Roman Empire to the Visigoths' conquest of Rome in 410 AD. Witness the transformation of Europe as the ancient world crumbles and medieval kingdoms rise. Discover how the legacy of Rome, despite its fall, continues to shape the future of Western civilization. Welcome to the tale of one of the most devastating moments in Roman history, the sack of Rome in 410 AD. The city, once the epicenter of a vast empire, was about to experience a catastrophe that would echo through the centuries. Alaric the Goth, the leader of the Visigoths, had long harbored ambitions of taking the city, and now, after years of conflict, the end was near. For centuries, Rome had stood unchallenged, but the decline of the Western Roman Empire had left it vulnerable. The Visigoths, a fierce barbarian tribe, would soon bring the glory of Rome to its knees. The Visigoths, originally invited into Roman territory as mercenaries, had grown restless under the Roman system's failure to meet their needs. After years of tension and betrayal, Alaric's resolve hardened. The Roman Empire, weakened by internal strife and external pressures, could no longer maintain control. In 410, the Visigoths were at Rome's doorstep, demanding ransom. The city, despite its once unimaginable wealth, was now surrounded by a siege that would soon prove to be its undoing. Alaric's army, an alliance of Visigoths, other barbarian tribes, and disillusioned Roman soldiers, proved to be formidable. They had already caused devastation across Italy, and now set their sights on the heart of the empire. The city's defenders, though outnumbered, fought fiercely to protect their sacred home. But as days turned into weeks, their hope began to fade. Alaric's siege tactics, including the blockade of food and supplies, started to take their toll. It was only a matter of time before the city would surrender. As the siege dragged on, the Roman Senate attempted to negotiate, but Alaric was unmoved. His demands were clear: recognition of his people, land for settlement, and the promise of gold. However, the negotiations failed. The Visigoths were not content with simply being appeased. They wanted much more complete control over Rome. With no agreement in sight, the city of Rome's days of glory were swiftly running out. The day came when the gates of Rome opened. In August 410 AD, after months of siege, the Visigoths broke through. Alaric's forces poured into the city like a tidal wave, and the unthinkable happened. Rome, the eternal city, was looted and ravaged. The once mighty Roman Empire, which had conquered much of the known world, could no longer protect its own capital. The sacking was a brutal and relentless affair. The Visigoths set fire to buildings, looted treasures, and slaughtered anyone who dared to resist. As the Visigoths pillaged the city, the symbols of Roman power were desecrated. Temples were plundered, statues defiled, and the great treasures of Rome, its gold, its works of art, were carted away. This was not only a military defeat, but a spiritual one as well. The sack of Rome shattered the idea that the city was invulnerable, that Rome's legacy was impervious to time. The Roman Empire, once the undisputed master of the Mediterranean, had now become a shadow of its former self. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths was a moment of profound crisis, not only for the Roman Empire, but for the world. Rome had long been the beacon of civilization, law, and culture. Now, the great city was reduced to rubble. For the citizens of Rome, it was a time of terror, despair, and loss. The once proud Roman identity had been fractured. Alaric's triumph marked the symbolic death of the old world and the dawn of a new, unpredictable era. Despite the destruction, Alaric's triumph did not mean the end of the Visigothic conquest. The sack of Rome was a statement, a declaration that the Visigoths were a power to be reckoned with. Alaric, however, was not content with merely sacking the city. His ambitions stretched beyond looting. He sought a kingdom of his own. After the sack, Alaric turned his eyes toward the southern provinces of Italy, planning to carve out a Visigothic homeland. The aftermath of the sack would haunt Rome for centuries. It marked the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. In the years that followed, the empire would continue to fragment, with more barbarian tribes, including the Vandals and Huns, pressuring its borders. Rome would never regain its former glory, and its fall in 476 AD would be seen as the final nail in the coffin of the Western Empire. Alaric, however, did not live to see the full impact of his actions. Shortly after sacking Rome, he led his people southward, seeking to establish a new kingdom in Italy. But his ambition would be cut short. In 410 AD, just months after his victory, Alaric died unexpectedly. His death left the Visigoths without their commanding leader, and the momentum of their conquest began to slow. Yet the memory of his triumph would live on, etched into the history of Rome and the Visigoths alike. Even after Alaric's death, the Visigoths would leave their mark on Italy and beyond. The sack of Rome had set a precedent. It had shown the world that the once untouchable power of Rome was not eternal. Over time, the Visigoths would establish their own kingdom in Gaul and Spain, securing their place in the history of Europe. But Rome, the city of emperors, would remain a symbol of decline and fall, forever remembered as the city that was once mighty, but ultimately could not withstand the tides of fate. The fall of Rome in 410 AD was a turning point, not just for the Roman Empire, but for the history of Europe. It signaled the start of the medieval period, an age of migrations, invasions, and the eventual rise of new kingdoms. The Dark Ages would follow, with the remnants of Roman civilization scattered across the continent. Yet, Rome's influence would persist, its culture and laws continuing to shape the medieval world, even as the empire itself had crumbled. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths remains one of the most powerful symbols of Rome's decline. While the city was never fully destroyed, the emotional and psychological impact was profound. Rome's myth of invulnerability had been shattered. The city would be rebuilt, but its former majesty and power would never be restored to their former glory. The events of 410 AD left an indelible mark on the Roman consciousness. A reminder that all empires, no matter how great, can eventually fall. Rome's symbolic fall in 410 AD resonated deeply across the Roman world. Though the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, would continue for another 1,000 years, the loss of the Western Empire's capital marked the irreversible decline of Roman authority in the West. The mighty city, once the hub of the civilized world, was now seen as a shadow of its former self. Alaric's victory, though short-lived in its direct impact, paved the way for the fragmentation of the Western Roman Empire, leaving a fragmented Europe in its wake. In the years following the sack, Rome's recovery was slow and painful. The Visigoths may have ravaged the city, but the essence of Rome, its people, its ideas, and its culture would survive. Christian Rome, now under the rule of the papacy, became the symbol of spiritual strength. The Pope, though no emperor, would eventually become the new face of Roman power, influencing both the religious and political landscape of Europe for centuries to come. Alaric's legacy, while marked by the destruction he brought to Rome, also set the stage for the future of Europe. The Visigoths would go on to establish their kingdom in Spain, a precursor to the medieval kingdoms that would soon dominate the continent. The Visigothic kingdom in Spain became a part of the foundation for what would later become the Christianized kingdoms of Europe, ensuring that the influence of Rome, even in its diminished state, would not disappear entirely. The impact of the sack of Rome was felt far beyond Italy. Throughout Europe, other barbarian tribes, such as the Vandals, Huns, and Franks, watched with keen interest. If the Visigoths could sack Rome, so could they. The fall of Rome marked the end of the Old World and the beginning of a new age of migrations, war, and new kingdoms. The Western Roman Empire, now in disarray, had lost its last breath of unity and strength. The fall of Rome was not the death of the idea of Rome itself. Over the centuries, the memories of its glory, its innovations in law, in governance, and its cultural influence would persist. The medieval world would view Rome through a lens of both admiration and sorrow. It became a beacon for future rulers, an example of power that could easily fade away. The memory of Rome's fall would serve as a warning. Empires must adapt, or they will fall. Though Rome had been sacked, its story did not end there. The city would see reconstruction in the coming centuries, though it would never regain its former glory. The early medieval period would see the rise of new powers, with the Holy Roman Empire emerging as a successor to Rome's imperial legacy. Yet Rome would always be remembered for its role in shaping Western civilization, and the memory of Alaric's triumph would linger, as it symbolized the beginning of the end of the ancient world. In the end, the sack of Rome by the Visigoths, led by Alaric, represented not just the end of an empire, but the beginning of a new chapter in European history. The fall of Rome marked the closing of the ancient world and the opening of the medieval era, a time of transformation, fragmentation, and rebirth. While the Western Roman Empire crumbled, the